Hogwarts, a History. Fanfiction written by Cooper Christensen. Music by Kevin MacLeod. Chapter 2. Act 1, Scene 8. Exterior, the Pilgrim Staff Tavern. Day. Salazar chops wood behind the tavern with Malkin. Malkin magics another large log into place on the chopping block. Looking beaten and sweaty, Salazar pauses. Salena kneels in the background at a decent-sized garden of herbs, picking a few and slipping them into the pocket of her dirt-covered apron. Salazar speaks to Malkin.
So you can use magic, but I can't. Is that it, then?
Malkin gives a shrug, unsure what to say.
Suppose so.
Salazar continues chopping. They work in silence as wizards and witches can be seen passing busily on the street in front of the tavern. He drives his axe into the stump used for a chopping block and deserts it to move over to Salena. She looks up as he approaches.
Can I have a word?
Salena gets to her feet, wiping her dirt-covered hands on her apron.
Go on then.
I realise I've taken my frustration out on you, and I regret how I acted. I know you are the only one who is always on my side. You are my constant ally, and I won't forget that again.
I'm not always on your side. You can be right foul git sometimes. I'm not afraid to call you out on it.
With a small smile, Salazar replies,
I know.
She smiles back at him. Grey comes out of the forest with a pitcher of water hovering behind her and a ladle to drink from.
Tell me again why I have to work like a bloody muggle in this place?
Mistress Deirdre says it's not muggle-like to work hard. Magic wasn't given to us to be latent. She says we should be able to do all that muggles can do and more. Seems like a good philosophy to me.
Seems like someone's sadistic way of gaining control to me.
Grey calls out as she approaches.
Would anyone care for a drink?
How good of you, Grey.
Grey responds as she gives a little curtsy.
Not at all, miss.
She passes the pitcher in front of Salazar, who takes the ladle and throws it away. He proceeds to dump the entire pitcher on himself, splashing both of them. Salena laughs as Grey jumps back to avoid the splashing water, and Malkin runs up to Salazar.
Don't use it all.
Salazar dripping wet.
What do you need to cool off for? You barely lifted a finger.
Malkin crosses his arms as Grey and Salena laugh. At that moment, Godric happened to be passing by on the street out front with his gang. He swaggers around to the back of the tavern, between the stable and the stack of chopped firewood.
You may be just a member of the help, but try to set yourself apart from the livestock if you can.
The gang members laugh as Salazar begins to square up and Godric taps in.
I don't care how badly you may be in need of a bath, but here in the Hollow we have the dignity to bathe in private.
More chuckling. Salazar pulls out his wand and Salena quickly steps in front of him to Godric's surprise.
Do the residents of this coven think it dignified of you to mess around with the dark arts every night?
Her words immediately strike fear into each one of their faces.
Did you hear this, wench? She's trying to frame us for the use of the dark arts she obviously came here to plague us with.
Godric steps closer to her threateningly.
Your lying tongue will be the end of your time here. You have no proof.
Proof is in the eye of the beholder, and your eyes can't hide the fear behind them.
Godric and his friends look at each other, their smiles fading as their shock turns to anger.
Maybe it's time this coven learned that Godric the Great isn't as great as they all think he is.
Godric sneers as Nearest pulls him away. The rest of his followers seem to have deserted him. Godric and Nearest slink back the way they came, and Grey breaks the silence fearfully.
Oh, missy, you shouldn't go upsetting that boy so. His family's the ones that funded this coven, they did. And with such outrageous stories.
It wasn't a story, Grey. He's guilt-ridden about it. It never leaves the back of his mind. I can tell that his thoughts are riddled with the worry that someone might discover what he's done in the shadows.
Salena looking toward Godric as he walks off in the distance.
What exactly did you see, Salena?
They've been practicing dark magic in secret for ages. That grimoire that they were flaunting last night was stolen from a peddler they threw out of the Hollow. The most recent of many. They've been practicing with other curses in the forest when everyone goes to sleep.
That dirty fraud.
It's sad, really.
It isn't sad. He's an entitled prick is what he is, and he deserves what's coming to him.
It's sad because of what some people will do for status and respect. He's trapped in a lie he doesn't even want to be a part of. Caught up in something he can't control. He hides behind this front when his friends are around, but deep down...
Salena becomes lost in her thoughts of compassion for the mix of feelings she saw inside this lost soul. After a pause, Grey speaks up.
My, missy got all that from one look? Grey worries what missy might discover about Grey with one look.
They laugh at her joke. End scene. Act 1, Scene 9. Interior, the Pilgrim Staff Tavern. Dusk. Salazar walks through the back door under the stairs, carrying a few pheasants for the evening menu. The tavern is empty as they await the first of the night's patrons. Paddock magically lifts the string of dangling birds from Salazar's shoulders, hanging them to rest on a hook behind the bar. He gives her a smile, hiding his jealousy that she can use magic and he isn't allowed. Then he scoops up a bucket of scraps for the pig slop and exits through the back door again. Paddock sweeps the floor and Malkin takes his place to play the music for the evening and begins warming up his instruments. Salena and Gray are in the kitchen chopping vegetables. The front door bursts open violently. A heavy-set and powerful-looking man with red hair and bushy eyebrows enters, looking regal and important. His wardrobe is gaudy, with gold ornaments and a fiery color scheme that resemble what royalty might wear in this century. On top of his head, he wears a brown pointed hat with a wide brim that goes all the way around his head. A deep maroon cloth wraps around the base of the hat to match the cape around his shoulders. His red hair pours out from under the hat like a lion's mane, covering his chin and a bushy beard, with locks that fall onto his shoulders. Godric trails behind him. The resemblance suggests that this is his father. The man speaks loudly as he approaches the bar.
I want to speak with Mistress Deirdre at once.
Paddock gives him a nod and snaps her fingers to disapparate, followed by a faint crack heard upstairs. Godric shifts his weight behind his father as Salena stands at attention, giving a small smile while she reads the man's mind. The man notices her staring and he glares at her. Her smile doesn't fade. He's about to bark something when Deirdre appears at the top of the stairs, followed by Paddock.
Godfrey! What a surprise! Don't you usually collect the rent on me tavern at the end of the moon cycle?
I'm not here about the rent, Deirdre.
Oh, more of a social visit then. Very well, I'll get your drink.
She moves around the bar, glaring at Godric as she passes.
You know I'm not here for a drink. Don't make this difficult.
Deirdre fills a stein with fire whiskey anyway.
You haven't been in for a drink in a long while, Godfrey. Just trying to be a good hostess is all.
She slides his drink across the bar. He takes it and sips. His tone shifts.
It has been brought to my attention that you are inviting outsiders to stay in the hollow without permission. Is this true?
Deirdre busies herself behind the bar.
Now, Godfrey, you know me. What happened to us? I thought we had an understanding, you and I.
Godfrey slams his drink down on the bar.
Enough! You will choose your words carefully, Deirdre, and I will not repeat myself again.
Knowing she can't keep this up, she returns to her usual attitude with a drink of her own.
All right, Godfrey. I've allowed other magic folk, like us, mind you, to find refuge here without your permission.
Raising her voice as he huffs and attempts to interject.
But they are not outsiders, as you so ignorantly assume.
Spare me your usual sermon of a united magical community, and listen to me when I say...
No!
Slamming her own stein down on the counter, she advances on him.
You listen to me. This coven is well known throughout the land, and better witches and wizards than the ones you allow to barter their stay have come and gone because of your greed you call better judgment. The fate of our magical brethren should not be left in the hands of one wizard and his lust for riches.
We have rules, Deirdre. We can't just let anyone off the street, for risk of being overrun, or what's worse, exposed.
Don't give me that troll dung. If that were true, you wouldn't be sending your thugs out to collect the highest bidder. The Wizards' Council lets you do whatever you want in this little kingdom of yours. And don't think I don't know that freedom to reign is purchased by giving them a cut of the taxes you collect from us.
Godfrey puts his drink down on the bar and straightens up, looking angrier than ever.
My philosophy has always been in line with the Wizards' Council, to keep dark magic from attracting the Muggles' attention and leading to more of our kind burning in the streets. It is that philosophy that has allowed you to find refuge here for the last few decades, if you don't recall. Correct me if I'm wrong, Deirdre, but there aren't many covens these days that will allow a witch with your background to run a tavern in their midst.
Deirdre has no retort. Salazar enters through the back door, having heard the shouting. He takes in the scene and glares at Godric. Godfrey continues, gesturing to Salazar.
Allowing these two to be unapproved by me could bring certain consequences upon our peaceful refuge here, the likes of which are unknown.
Deirdre, trying to regain her composure calmly.
You have no reason to worry about unknown consequences from these. They are but the offspring of Salena, who was one of us for longer than your boy there, if you don't recall.
Godfrey, now infuriated.
You mean to tell me the daughter of Sargon the Squib looks to us to take in her bastards? And after how she deserted her place here?
Deirdre brandishes her wand with a challenging flare and points it directly between his eyes. You will not use a title like that when speaking of Master Sargon under this roof, sir. Godfrey, clearly afraid of what she might do.
All right.
She lowers her wand, and he addresses her calmly.
Nevertheless, that wench deserted her spot here, and now she treats this coven like an inn. Sending her orphan children here after that miserable peddler got them murdered by witch hunters, no doubt. For all we know, these two could be leading the enemy right to us.
Salazar aggressively throws his bucket to the ground and advances on Godfrey with his wand drawn. Godric matches him, stepping out from his father's shadow. How dare you! Deirdre points her wand over her shoulder, removing his lips, sealing his mouth seamlessly with his own flesh. Never even looking in his direction, she rolls her eyes. Godric gives a cheeky grin. Ha! That ought to remind you. Godfrey follows Deirdre's lead as he lazily waves his wand at Godric, who notices his voice has been silenced. He mouths the words in silent protest, with a look of shock that his father would silence him. Deirdre addresses Godfrey.
You know as well as I that the bloody king of fratricide has turned our people against one another, and against the muggles who used to be our living. If not for that murderous deserter, you and the world we live in would be much more tolerant of differences than you are now. There's a war coming, and we can't afford to turn away any of our own.
A pause as all eyes shift. No one dares to move with the tension so thick in the air.
I know how you feel about the King of Alba and his influence on the witch hunters, but retaliating will only make matters worse for all of us. We simply don't have the numbers to combat their armies, and the Wizards' Council has instructed us to lay low. I know what he has done to us, and breathing the same as you in this age of darkness. He's turned wand wielders into rats that hide in the briars. But we must hide in order to survive. That is simply what all magical communes must do at this delicate hour. Which is why I must insist on approving these and their belongings before they're permitted to stay another moment.
Deirdre looks defeated as she responds. They're quite young in the magical arts, Godfrey. They haven't yet been properly trained. Besides, they only came with the clothes on their backs. They have nothing, and nowhere to go.
I'm sorry, Deirdre, but they must prove that they can contribute to the shared wealth of our coven. You say they have no proper training, which means they are alike to the magical brethren you expect to rise up and fight against kings and their armies. I fear you forget how rare it is in this day to have a magical upbringing like the one you and I enjoyed.
I haven't forgotten, Godfrey. It's that fact that keeps me up at night, knowing it will be our downfall. Salena steps forward with all eyes on her.
If I may, mistress, my brother and I are prepared to prove ourselves. I can see that you are truthful about your feelings concerning the state of the magical community, and I can also see that your favourite meal is goose on brochette. You despise the dark arts and anyone that tampers with them.
Her eyes jolt to glare at Godric for only a moment, then back to Godfrey again.
Your greatest ambition is that your son will grow to be courageous as well as chivalrous. And while you have fallen in love with the woman you married, her true blood status as a Muggleborn must stay hidden from the Wizards' Council, for fear of being removed from your post here in the Hollow.
All eyes move slowly to see Godfrey's reaction.
Forgive me, sir. I knew you would not believe that I was a true legilimens and had not simply been informed. I had to reveal something that not even your own son knew.
All eyes move slowly to see Godfrey's reaction. His eyes stare widely back at her, and he stammers, searching for something to say. Godric softens his expression as he watches his father's speechless reaction.
You have convinced me of your talents. If I permit you to stay with us, I trust that what you have revealed here tonight will stay in the confines of this tavern and never be spoken of again. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir.
As for your brother, he must demonstrate his own talents in order to be permitted to stay.
All eyes turn to Salazar, who gestures to his mouth, which is returned to him with a jerk of Deirdre's wand. He turns to Paddock. Paddock? Hold that blade still, would you? Paddock does as she's told. The now static blade vibrates and transfigures itself into a beautiful emerald snake. She gives a small yelp and drops the snake on the countertop. The snake slithers around, exploring its surroundings. Salazar walks toward the snake and speaks in Parseltongue. The snake coils and rears its head as he reaches it. The snake slithers into his outstretched hand. He turns around to Godric and holds the snake in his face, then says vengefully. The serpent hisses threateningly and snaps at Godric, who recoils. Godfrey looks disappointed by his son's cowardice.
I've seen enough.
Salazar grasps the snake, and in that fluid motion the scaly skin turns back into a blade, and he places it on the counter. Godric glares at Salazar, breathing heavily from the rush of adrenaline.
A parselmouth.
Godfrey eyes Salazar.
Your talents aren't much use to this coven, but they are rare to be sure. You have both proven yourselves of sufficient magical ability and shall be permitted to join our coven. This permit is dependent on your ability to contribute goods to the shared wealth of the Hollow, and maintain peace with the members who dwell here. Understood?
Yes, sir. Godfrey looks to Deirdre.
Deirdre, I bid you a good evening, and I don't feel the need to remind you of what I'm capable of should tonight's interactions become public.
He glares at her threateningly as she smiles back at him. Are you threatening me, Godfrey?
Yes, I am. Good night.
She stares at him with a smile still on her face as he turns to leave, pushing his son toward the door as Godric continues to stare daggers at Salazar. The door slams shut behind them. Well, my little jinxes, I'm glad to see you're ready to hold your own, but I'd like you kindly not to be reading my thoughts, lass. Salena blushes.
Yes, of course, mistress.
I always had me suspicion about that wife of his. Always keeps to herself, but I never would have guessed she'd be a muggle-born.
It's no wonder. His son's a two-faced little pretender. Only fitting that his mother should be one too.
Now see here, Master Salazar. You keep that forked tongue of yours from talking that way about a lady. But you heard what he said about Aye, we were all here. You mustn't stoop to their level, otherwise you're no better. There's a lot you don't know about this coven.
Then tell us.
That's a long story, lass.
I understand. It's only that I'd like to respect your request not to read your thoughts, but my curiosity might just get the better of me.
Salena smiles impishly at Deirdre, who smiles and shakes her head. The fact that Sargon was a single father with a young daughter caused everyone to take compassion on them both.
What happened to his wife?
Master Sargon may not have magical talent, but he had a talent when it came to women. Not long after they first met, she became pregnant, and once the baby was born, she deserted them both. Having discovered that he was in fact a squib, according to him, she feared that her child might be one as well.
A squib?
A person born of magical heritage, who has eyes to see the magical world but no magical talent.
Sounds almost as bad as being born a muggle.
Master Sargon was resilient. He wouldn't let such things discourage him. A flashback begins. Deirdre narrates as a young Master Sargon is seen. With a wee babby under his arm, he made his way to the Hollow. At the time, this was a new coven.
One where he thought his daughter would have every opportunity to be trained as a witch. He built this tavern with his own hands. When others would ask why he did muggles' work, he would respond, Magic
wasn't given to us to make us latent, but rather for us to show that we are able to do all that muggles can do, and then some.
Aye.
He inspired the entire coven to rise above their hatred and follow his philosophy, to be better than their enemies.
But it was all a lie. He would have used magic if he could have.
Maybe he would. The fact is, he won the hearts and minds of the masses, not with spells and enchantments, but with his words. Young Sargon is seen looking up at his hard work. We came to the Hollow not long after he finished this place, and we all raised Serena together. Scenes of Deirdre, Paddock, Grey, Malkin, and Sargon chasing a toddler around the tavern. When she came of age and wasn't showing any magical ability, that's when people started suspecting them both. There was a terrible tribunal held in the main hall down by the square. They forced Master Sargon and Serena to perform magic, otherwise they'd be banished from the coven forever. Shell the town gathered in a large assembly hall ready to judge. Deirdre and the elves are in attendance as well. Poor Master Sargon couldn't move the pail even a smidgen off the floor. I suppose when Serena saw her father brought to tears and about to be driven from their home, she found the ability inside herself. She caused that pail and every other lifeless object in that hall to become weightless. The main hall couldn't be used after that, as those things never did come back down. For years and years, no spell could release him from being suspended in time. Seeing as he was one of the original residents and owner of the beloved tavern, we got enough votes on our side allowing him to stay. He knew no witch or wizard would want to buy from a squib, so he had me take over the tavern for him, and Sargon went on looking after the livestock. Show him working with the horses and doing manual labour around the tavern. He was shunned for the rest of his days. Your mother would help me in the bar and would train with me during the day while her father did her chores. When Serena left us, he would go alone into that hall and sit among the objects still suspended in time, amazed by her ability. Sho and older Sargon sitting in the main hall moved to tears by her beautiful enchantment on the objects there. I don't know what he would do in there. Just sit and think of her, I suspect. End flashback.
What a sad life.
'Twas a difficult life, miss, but Master Sargon was a happy man until the very end. Aye. He passed not long after Serena left. Begin another flashback. The doors to the main hall open to reveal Master Sargon's body floating along with all the other objects suspended in time. We found his body in that very hole, floating peacefully among the rest of the items she had enchanted during her lifetime. End flashback. He never let this world get him down. Even when Serena left, he still found joy, knowing that she was happy. Deirdre raises her stein with a nod to the rafters, then finishes the remains.
We knew something must have happened to Serena a few weeks ago, when all the enchanted objects in that hall came crashing down to the ground again.
They all hang their heads. She gets to her feet to go back to work.
How could our mother leave him behind?
Deirdre turns back to him. I'm not sure I can answer that, lad. Didn't your mother ever tell you why she left?
She never told us anything about this place.
Deirdre looks shocked along with the elves. I guess that means you were never told how your parents met each other, were you?
All we know is our father was a travelling salesman, and he asked her to run away with him.
Well, your father was one of the refugees that fled from Hungary. Many Hungarians were displaced because of the Byzantines, and found the best way to make a living was as travelling salesman. His first stop in the coven was at this tavern, where he encountered your mother. She warned him that he would be obliviated if he was found trespassing.
Obliviated?
Having one's memories erased. Standard practice of Godfrey's to keep the location hidden. Your father took your mother's word, but he came back in the dark of night to convince her to run away with him. She was miserable here, so she accepted his offer. She left a note for Master Sargon, and that was it. I believe she didn't try to take him along, as she thought he would convince her to stay if she tried to give him a proper goodbye. The truth she never knew was that he cried himself to sleep that night as she was leaving. You see, it was he that caught your father before he left and told him to come back and take her from this place. The first patron of the night walks in and she greets him.
Lo, Heinrich. We'll be right with you.
Deirdre speaks to the tavern staff. There's work to be done. The elves hop back to work as Salazar and Salena give each other a look, feeling slightly depressed. Begin montage. Salazar and Salena earn their keep by doing chores in the day and serving drinks at night. Paddock and Deirdre train them on dueling and using more everyday spells. At night, Salena will wake with nightmares of fire and archers attacking them. She wakes in tears and Salazar comforts her. Godric's gang continue to taunt them from afar, but Godric does not engage. Days pass in this montage. End scene. Act 1, Scene 10. Interior, the Pilgrim Staff Tavern. Night. The tavern is full of customers like the nights before, all drinking and eating. Salena is serving food to a nearby table while Salazar prepares drinks and Paddock cooks with her daughter. Deirdre supervises from behind the bar with her arms folded. Salazar approaches her. Mistress Deirdre, the other night with Godfrey, you mentioned the King of Alba. What does he have to do with the wizarding community? Deirdre responds without looking at him. The bloody king of fratricide, you mean to say? He stole the throne under pretense of a lie and multiple accounts of murder. He is the reason all the monarchs condemn the magical community. Salena has just approached the bar to fill her empty tray with the drinks he prepared. She looks at Salazar with a worried look as to what he is getting Deirdre worked up about. If that's true, he's also responsible for the mob that killed our parents, that displaced Paddock and her family, and everyone else who's been run out of their home for the use of magic. Aye, his hands are responsible for the blood of more witches and wizards than you like to believe, lad. Then what are we waiting for? Why are we not fighting to stop him? Now, lad, it's not that simple. Now, he is the cause for the murders of innocent witches and wizards throughout the world. Does the Wizards' Council not care? Do they not care about those being slaughtered every day? Those still on the run and the rest of us living in hiding? You don't have to convince me, lad. My own flesh and blood fell under the same cruelty. I know how you're taking this, but nothing. While witches like you sit here comfortable and protected, People like my parents get burned at the stake. If you truly knew how I felt, you would do something instead of hiding out here for the rest of your life. Tavern patrons begin to take notice of the growing volume of their conversation. Deirdre suddenly becomes violent.
You don't know what you speak, boy. This is a war I've been fighting for most of my life. A person can only resist for so long, and there were too few allies willing to pick me up again after resisting.
They glare at each other, the tension thick in the room.
Seems that you've had a long day. You'll go upstairs and we'll handle things down here for the night.
He tears his apron off and throws it on the counter, still fuming as he crosses to the stairs. Deirdre resumes her previous stance and the pub goes back to their business without being told. Salena and Paddock exchange worried glances. Salazar bursts through the door of the bedroom and slams it behind him as he begins pacing. He breathes angrily as he tries to calm himself when he sees something out the window catch his eye. He moves slowly to the window, captivated. Deep in the forest, a light blue glow can be seen flickering between the trees. He grips his wand tightly, his fury ignited again. He casts a spell straight down out of the window into the ground below. The colorless flare is absorbed into the grass and dirt with a ripple that makes the ground look like liquid. He dangles his legs out the window and jumps the 2.5 stories down to the ground. Landing on his back, the ground absorbs his fall as it disperses the kinetic energy rippling through the dirt. He gets to his feet, looks up at the window, and takes off into the forest toward the source of the light. End scene. Act 1, Scene 11. Exterior forest, night. A shaky cam follows Salazar as he runs through the trees. Only a few streams of moonlight break the canopy of the forest, but Salazar does not light his wand. As he runs, he holds it ready for a fight. The sound of something in the bushes behind him causes him to stop suddenly. Thinking he heard someone behind him, he lights his wand to quickly look back over his shoulder. Seeing an empty forest, he douses his light and resumes his sprint. He starts to hear voices and slows to a stealth walk. He recognizes the voices as Godric's gang. A few yards ahead, a clearing containing a light blue bonfire glows much fainter than before. He stops close enough to hear them and see figures moving against the light of the bonfire. He crouches down to hide as one of them tosses something into the fire, making it flare violently as before. The flames flare with the faint roar of a beast. Simultaneously, long strands of indigo flame shoot from the fire pit and swirl through the air. The watchers dodge the angry flames and laugh at the adrenaline rush. Salazar notices one figure standing off on the other side of the fire. Now illuminated by the blaze, the figure is revealed to be Godric. He looks terrified of what he and his friends are summoning. The others dance around the fire excitedly as Salazar watches, still hidden in the bushes.
That was the boldest one yet. We're nearly there. Is it really worth all this effort to summon the thing every time?
Nearest, reading from the grimoire.
We won't have to do this every time. We're almost done, and then we can summon the beast whenever we want with a simple spell.
Go on. What's the last bit?
The final step says to add the powdered death caps.
Another figure scoops up powder in his hands from a blanket of ingredients that have been prepared. He throws it in the fire while keeping his distance. The roar from the flames is even louder and angrier. Those around the fire begin to stagger. One of the streamers of flames shoots directly at Salazar hiding behind the bush. He ducks down to avoid being consumed by the flame that makes explosive contact with the trunk of a tree a few meters behind him. The tree trunk doesn't catch on fire, but simply crumbles to ash where it was hit. Salazar jumps out from his hiding place and rolls behind another tree for cover. The tree falls to the ground with a big commotion, still visibly rotting from the inside out. A moment passes as the gang look around to see if everyone is alright. Then they start to chuckle nervously from the near-death experience they shared. Their laughter fades away as the tree that fell begins rising into the air upside down. Salazar watches it, confused at what would make it do this. The gang watches as it glides through the cool night air in the silent clearing. It rises up high above the blue flames. Then the tree suddenly drops into the pit of fire, limbs first, where it is consumed more than halfway up the tree trunk. The fire gives one last painful screech that fades away and sprays indigo embers in every direction, engulfing the tree in vine-like streams of blue fire. The brightness of the fire causes everyone to take cover and look away until it calms a few moments later. The ash blows away and the charred remains of the tree stand smoking in the now fireless pit. Hereward breaks the silence furiously.
What the hell was that?
No one responds.
How did that happen?
We almost had her!
Never mind. We obviously weren't ready to summon her. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe you weren't ready. How else do you expect to get rid of those two?
Godric doesn't respond.
Did you douse the fire, Ricky?
Of course not. That wasn't me. It was a good plan, but she seemed to be too powerful for us to control. Oh, was Godric the Great a little scared?
Try as you might, Hereward, but you've already earned the reputation of the coward of this group.
Hereward advances on him.
Say that again, you prissy son of a...
Stop!
Everyone stops.
There's someone out there.
Hereward suddenly nervous.
Is it her? Did we do it?
Shh!
They all look around with only the moonlight for visibility.
Homenum Revelio!
Salazar is pushed by a strong gust of wind that emanates from Neris's wand.
Salazar, only son of Isaac.
He quickly covers his mouth in disbelief. The gang exchange looks of fury, and Hereward gives a ferocious groan.
Find him!
There's a loud crack that startles Salazar into a run, and all but Hereward and Godric come sprinting toward him. He has a head start, but cannot hide from the spray of stunning spells that chase after him. Pushing past bushes and trees as he clambers blindly back through the forest as another onslaught of spells stream past him. He retreats as fast as he can in the dark until one spell strikes him squarely in the back. He falls flat on his face, knocked unconscious by the spell. Cut to the gang dropping his unconscious body at Hereward's feet. Hereward points his wand down at Salazar.
Renovate.
Salazar jolts awake and resumes panting as if he was still running for his life. He looks up into Hereward's face and notices the wand pointing down at him.
So, you thought you'd spy on us, did you?
Salazar gets to his feet and brushes himself off, unconcerned. I know dark magic when I see it. You, however, have no idea what a demon like the one you were summoning might be capable of. Oh, and I suppose the kin of a squib would. All but Godric chortle.
Perchance you have no idea what we're capable of.
Hereward raises his wand slowly as the rest follow his move.
I say we obliviate him.
Hereward sighs in frustration and lowers his wand.
This is exactly what I mean, Godric. You're too afraid to get your hands dirty.
Godric rounding on Hereward.
Don't be thick. If he goes missing, the whole coven will suspect foul play and investigate.
Erasing his mind is risky as well. You're not practiced enough with that spell to only erase his memories of what he saw tonight. If you erase it completely, they'll still have cause to investigate.
Hereward moves to open the grimoire.
If I remember correctly, this grimoire contains a handful of spells that should teach him to keep his mouth shut.
While Hereward thumbs through the book, Salazar makes eye contact with Godric, who looks away, seemingly ashamed.
Ah, here it is.
Hereward closes the book, pointing his wand at Salazar as the others back away.
Crucio.
Salazar bends over backwards, violently contorting his spine, his face in agony, tears already streaming from his eyes. He falls backward onto the grass and silently screams to the sky. His fingers dig into the earth, his torso arched in pain, and his legs flailing about. Hereward smiles as he watches him writhe, still twisting his wand like a dagger in a wound. Hereward drops his wand a bit tiredly, and immediately the peaceful night air is split with an agonizing scream of pain from deep in Salazar's throat. Salazar rolls over, his face on the ground, all of his energy spent, panting and crying into the grass. Then, in a fierce rage, he pulls himself up and lunges at Hereward. With his strength spent, Hereward easily kicks him back down to the ground.
I suppose that means you're ready for another? Crucio.
A gray beam of light soars like a rocket from the trees and knocks Hereward into the air, throwing him 10 meters back. Salena bursts through the trees at a full sprint.
Accio!
Salazar's wand is pulled from Neris's hand, and Salena catches it in the air, still advancing on them at full speed. She cuts through the air with both wands to redirect the spray of jinxes that the others fire at her. The treetops over her head absorb the impact of the jinxes. She swipes a ribbon of yellow light in front of her that knocks Esmond and his brother off their feet. From behind a cluster of boulders, Paddock lifts Salazar from the ground and pulls him through the air to land safely with her. Neris sends more curses at Salena, who redirects them and begins to duel with her. Godric stands awestruck by this young witch's skill and bravery. Salena casts a large red spark at Neris, who drops to the ground to dodge as it whizzes over her head. Salena takes the chance to bolt back into the trees to her left as Neris futilely sends more hexes her way. Salena slides behind the boulders, landing near Salazar, who is still recovering from the pain of the torture curse. Salena offers him his wand.
Are you alright?
Salazar takes the wand.
I will be.
Salazar sits up and fires a spell at the gang. Neris blocks it from hitting her and Godric. Neris screams furiously in the distance.
Wake up, Ricky!
More spells spray through the trees. Salazar, Salena, and Paddock crouch behind the boulders and send spells back at them. Hereward and the 3 others are back on their feet, and Godric has joined the fight. Each group sends spells at the other, blocking and ducking. Salena hits Nearest in the stomach with a lime green bolt of light that causes her to keel over and retch. Hereward hits Salena in the face with a powerful orange orb of light. She falls back into Salazar's arms, her eyes rolled back in her head and blood quickly pouring from her nose. Paddock erupts with the rage of a mother defending her cub, directing large gusts of force, pummeling the ground and sending the earth and those around it to be thrown backward. She relents and the ground begins to quake. The fire pit glows with disturbed embers as the light blue flames build and the screech of a beast rumbles through the clearing. The bonfire is back to its former glory, swallowing the splintered tree trunk. Everyone watches the scene as giant claws rip the remains of the tree trunk apart from the inside, revealing a horned, skeletal creature completely on fire. It gives a loud and no longer muffled roar, and the onlookers start to back away. Hereward has a smile on his face as he watches the smoke drip off the creature's body as the fire spreads. One of the gang members gets to their feet and retreats into the woods. Godric looks up at the demon, terrified. Salena lifts herself and looks in the direction of the fire. A view from her perspective shows her eyesight is blurry. She can't make out the creature. Her head spins with the after effects of the hex she was hit with. The creature jumps into the air, flapping its winged arms, effectively spraying the ground with sparks that char the grass. The creature flaps its wings once or twice and comes crashing back down. As Godric tries to run out of the way, Salazar sends a blast from his wand to save him from the fiery explosion caused by the creature's fall. The ground of the clearing splits open, with the glow of the light blue flames coming up from underneath. The scene is chaos, with blinding white hot flames and black smoke distorting the forest. Ashes from the incinerated foliage blows across the landscape, and the beast roars into the sky. Nearest searches for Godric in a panic but cannot find him. Esmond stares up at the beast and tries to pull Nearest away from the heat of the flames. Paddock and Salazar help Salena to her feet, and they all begin to run back toward the tavern. Just then, Godfrey and a few other witches and wizards come blazing into the clearing, casting bright yellow flashes of light at the monster. The lights build on the tips of their wands and are hurled at the beast like stones from a sling, causing it to shriek in pain. The creature flails its wings around as it pulls itself back to the pit it came from. Salazar, Salena, and Paddock watch from a safe distance as the witches and wizards fight the creature back. It screams, shifting from anger to panic as the lights flare and force the creature deeper into the fiery pit. Deirdre reaches the scene and just stares in shock at the violent fire. The creature gives a final shriek, and all that is left is the fire that begins to consume the forest. The witches and wizards reduce the flames to a smaller and smaller area until it suffocates and only silence remains. A few wizards lift a body into the air as it writhes in pain, smoke still drifting away from his burns. One of the gang members crouches in a fetal position next to the charred remains of his brother. A witch comes to his side. Godric stands in shock at the scene that played out so quickly. Nearest is helped to her feet by a few witches. Her eyes look around for her friends. The cries of agony finally sound from the one who lost a brother. Deirdre turns to see Salazar, Salena, and Paddock watching from the trees. She looks both relieved and overwhelmed with despair. Cut to a bird's-eye shot of the ashes and smoke rising in the moonlight. The first responders stagger around trying to assess the situation. The sounds of Esmond's grief echoing through the valley. End scene. Act 1, Scene 12. Interior Pilgrim Staff Tavern, the middle of the night. Salazar and Salena sit quietly at a table in the empty tavern. Deirdre sits across from them, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide as she stares at the dying fire in the fireplace. They all seem to be in shock. Malkin comes to the table, bringing goblets of butterbeer. Gray bandages Paddock's arm. They drink in silence for a moment. Deirdre finally breaks the silence without moving. "Explain yourselves." Salena looks to Salazar as he hangs his head. Then he responds. "I did as you told me and went upstairs." Deirdre turns to bark at him furiously.
"You should have had the good sense to stay there."
A commotion can be heard outside, and the windows glow with the light of wands and even torches. A banging knock raps on the door 3 times. Frantic voices can be heard outside. Deirdre makes her way to the door as someone pounds impatiently again. She opens the door to see Godfrey and one of his thugs standing there with their wands in her face. The rest of the coven stands in the street below, jabbering in a panic.
"Godfrey, All I want to hear out of you is a command to your elf to give us an account of what happened tonight."
Paddock swallows nervously as Deirdre looks to her. Deirdre reluctantly gestures with her hand to have her come out onto the stoop. Salazar and Salena stand back from the doorway, waiting. "Paddock?"
Would you kindly tell us your account of the events that have transpired tonight?
Paddock looks around nervously at the coven that wait on her every word. She looks up at Deirdre and gives a small nod. Then she looks down at her feet and holds her arm for comfort.
Paddock did not mean to interfere. You must believe, Paddock.
Begin flashback. Show Paddock at the window in the kitchen doing dishes. Something large falls in front of the window and a sharp grunt can be heard outside. She looks up and peeks outside to see Salazar pulling himself from the ground. He brushes himself off and sprints into the forest. The ground solidifies itself again. Paddock dries her hands and exits the shot. She narrates the rest from her perspective.
Master Salazar was sent upstairs, but Paddock saw him sneak out. Paddock was worried about the young master, so Paddock decided to follow. Ran through the forest, Paddock did, and Paddock could barely keep up.
Show Salazar turned to see who was behind him, and Paddock hides in the bushes.
There was a glow coming from the clearing that Master Salazar was headed toward. Paddock feared what it could be. The master hid at the edge of the clearing and watched as Master Godric and his friends fed a fire by reading from a grimoire.
The crowd reacts to this, surprised, and Paddock becomes more nervous as her timid eyes look up at Godfrey's angry face.
Paddock saw they were trying to summon a creature from the flames. Paddock was nervous and had to stop them. The dark magic was too strong for any of them to understand. Paddock lifted a fallen tree and attempted to extinguish the fire in order to stop them before they conjured something they could not control.
Show Paddock lifting the tree with great effort and dropping it into the fire pit. End flashback.
But that made them come after Master Salazar, so Paddock apparated back to the tavern to get help, she did. Paddock did not want to involve Mistress Deirdre for fear of what Master Salazar's punishment would be, so Paddock brought Missy,
Paddock gestures to Salena,
back to the clearing instead.
Paddock's eyes well with tears.
As Paddock took Missy back to the clearing, we could hear Master Salazar in terrible pain. It seems they was torturing him, they was. And that's when the fighting started. As Paddock defended around, the forces awoke the creature. Paddock did not mean to be such trouble. Paddock was only trying to keep the young masters safe.
She begins to cry uncontrollably. Deirdre places a hand on her friend's shoulder. She pulls the elf into her leg to console her.
It wasn't your fault, Paddock.
That remains to be seen.
It was your boy that was playing with the grimoire. It's quite clear who's at fault here.
A book like that would have no business in this coven unless it was smuggled in.
You
I
unbelievable...
find it no coincidence that there's talk of a grimoire just after those two arrive, with only your word to protect their belongings from inspection.
You corrupted old ogre. That gang of miscreants were fiddling with the dark arts, and you know it.
Godfrey addresses the mob.
No one sleeps until the guilty are cast out. I call for an immediate trial to discover the guilty party.
End of chapter 2.